Hey guys, this is the 7th Generation Gamer, and today I will be covering the lore of Metroid Fusion. This video will mainly cover the new bloods, as the old bosses like Ridley and the Chozo statue are more or less really well known. Kicking this off, we're going to talk about Zazabi. Zazabi is the token plant boss of the series, and I'm saying this because, well, not much is really known about this guy. It seems like it came from SR388, and the scientists took him in because they just wanted a tree alien and or a cell-shaped creature. Lore-wise, it looks like this guy would totally fit into SR388, as he carries all the traditional Metroid functions. It loves to eat anything and everything that comes nearby, and more or less even attack Samus in the same way, by jumping onto Samus's head and attacking her. The only way to get free of the monster's grip is after being forced into a morph ball. You must use bombs to escape. All very similar strategies to how we fight the Metroids and the Queen Metroid. The way you have to damage it is by firing missiles into its mouth when it tries to jump on top of Samus. This is similar to Metroids as well because missiles are the main way of damaging it. Honestly, at this point, some of the creatures the researchers captured come off as a weird game to me. Like one of the guys said to the other, "Hey, whoever catches the weirdest looking thing gets free dinner for the month." Then every guy ran off in different directions, capturing monsters like they were Pokemon. This guy even looks like he could be a Pokemon if you change up the design just a little bit. Or maybe even a Digimon. Hey, Zazabimon sounds like some weird type of thing that Japan could come up with. Up next is the scientists. The X are supposedly intelligent according to Adam, but we don't really see them doing anything of serious intelligence within the game. The main thing that we see them doing is infecting creatures, and basically trying to survive and multiply. These creatures seem to be less like intelligent monsters and just creatures living off of instinct, with their one desire being to infect anything and everything organic. Now here's the part that gets a bit confusing. Now we see several times within the game that Adam mentions that these guys are supposedly only capable of infecting and replicating organic stuff. Yet when we run into the scientist, who happens to be trying to blow up the space station, they copy the outfit as well. The outfit is basically anything but organic, right? So why could they even replicate that? I don't know. Maybe I'm just looking a little bit too deeply into that one there. However, another thing about the X comes into play here. Remember when I said that the X are supposed to be intelligent? Well, here we have one who has no desire to survive. He basically was on a suicidal mission. Another thing which I should mention here is that the other X were trying to stop Samus. They could have let Samus deal with the scientists, but they chose to basically take one for the team here. So much for intelligence, because if they had any intelligence at all, then they could have just attacked Samus as a mob, or I don't know, maybe send more than one of the SAX after her. That definitely would have been smarter than trying to blow up the research station. The scientist has no real means of attacking Samus, and he, or it, just kind of stands there. It isn't until you damage him a little bit that he turns into his core X form and attacks with a wave beam. Next up is Ceres. Now Ceres is probably one of my favorite bosses in Metroid Fusion, and the fact that this creature was basically cheated is what made me want to do this lore video. Now what do I mean by cheated? Well, stick with me here. Now we see Adam mention earlier in the game before you even see Ceres that this guy was captured, and the researchers were doing tests on it. Now what could they do with one very speedy boy? I don't know. However, the fact remains that we were promised an opportunity to more or less see a normal creature from SR388 that had not been infected yet. Now Adam knows all about the X and how they infect organic creatures, yet he did not think to even mention that it was brutally, and I mean brutally, destroyed. SAX is the only thing that I could think of to be the root cause of this, as Ceres is extremely fast and no normal X creature could have hurt it. Now Adam does say that the SAX released it. When we finally make it to Ceres' room, all we see are the remains of what should have been Ceres. Now when we think about what Ceres is and where it came from, it makes me wonder why this creature, as it came from SR388 like all the others, why does it look so similar to a monster from Zebes? Then, if we are looking at SR388 closely here, then that would mean that it came from a place very similar to Meridia. Now the thing is, and I'm going to mention this again very soon here, but it seems like the people at Nintendo were very inspired by Super Metroid when creating this boss. If you were to tell me it came from Zebes, then I could totally see it coming from somewhere deep within Meridia. Ceres is such an interesting boss, because when I think about SR388 and what we know about it, the Metroid infestation, and the fact that the Chozo were there too, I can't help but imagine this guy playing an extreme game of tag with the Metroids, with the Metroids being basically unable to catch him. Long story short, I love this boss and I wish they would have done more with it. The fact that they had him in a breeding chamber means that it was possible that there were multiple ones, and this SAX decided to ruin everything. Next up is Security Box, or BOX. Now, the Security Box has got to be one of the more unique enemies in this game. Now, while I don't know what the BOX stands for, and even after extensive research into the name on the wiki, I'm going to assume it means a bioorganic extreme weapon or something along those lines. Now, just looking at what we know about this thing, the design of it, it has a 5 on it, meaning that there is more than one, or they created 5 of these things, and this one was the one that was successful in doing what they wanted it to do. Now, the security robot has a crab-like design, meaning it can move in many directions at once, along with its extremely powerful legs that can be used for jumping long distances and jumping very high. This robot can also fire off missiles and bombs depending on when you encounter it. This is interesting because why would the BSL scientists need something like this if they were specifically researching these creatures? Now, I would assume that they would only want to stop their target if one of their monsters or test subjects managed to escape. I suppose that even they were worried that things could get out of hand if one of the monsters escaped. Now comes the more confusing parts about this robot. Why did it decide to destroy a data room? If this robot was operating as a normal robot should during the first encounter, then why would it go out of its way to destroy a data room that was no real threat to it, or even attack Samus? With a bit of research on the wiki, I did manage to find out some interesting theories on the subject, and the main ones were more or less what I was thinking. And that is that, yep, this robot went rogue and perceived Samus as a threat. Now you may be asking, why is this? Well, that is because of the Metroid DNA that Samus has within her body. Then the question becomes, why would it want to destroy anything Metroid related? Well, if you hop, skip, and jump a little bit forward with me in the game here, then you will see in a little place called the Restricted Zone that they were doing tests on Metroids. The robot was probably put in place so that it could stop any rogue Metroid from escaping. Then another theory that I came across was the possibility that it was just trying to stop the SAX from downloading data. Now this theory may work, but then that raises the question of why would the SAX even need to get upgrades if it already had the fully upgraded suit? Not to mention, we see it going out of its way to destroy most of the research station. It just didn't seem like it wanted to get upgrades specifically. Up next is the Yakuza. The Yakuza is probably one of the strangest bosses in the game. We don't know much about this creature, other than it was taken from SR-388, and that it was possibly feeding off the electricity from the auxiliary room according to the wiki. Its main method of attacking is by shooting fire at Samus, and picking her up and draining the life out of her. The second phase of the fight has it spitting worms out at her. As far as draining the electricity out of the auxiliary room goes, I completely agree with this theory, as when it is picking up Samus, it sounds like it is sucking the life out of her. And unless its fangs are somehow penetrating the suit itself, then that would mean that it is feeding off of the power supply of the suit. Now the interesting part here is, where could this creature have possibly come from on SR-388? Now my first thought is just one of the several caves on the planet, but with a bit more research, I came up with a better idea. This creature bears a bit of resemblance to another creature that many Metroid fans know of, the Phantom. They both share the same desire to leech energy. It's strange because Zebes is a completely different planet, and yet this boss here shares so many similarities with Phantom. If anything, I'd say that Yakuza was most likely planned to be a creature from Zebes. Nintendo probably changed their minds or ran out of time and then didn't decide to use the creature until later. Story-wise, I could say that the researchers captured it and brought it back to the station for further research. The Yakuza having a name similar to a Japanese gang makes me think that this creature has a big family, and we have only seen the beginning of this creature. And next up is the SAX. The X and the SAX are the primary antagonists of this game, and so I'm going to group them together for this section of the video. To start, we will talk about the X. For the most part, we only know that these creatures were already on SR-388, and apparently they must have either been in hibernation or in hiding. This was due to the fact that their natural predators, the Metroids, were constantly on the hunt for them. Now the strange thing is, why would the Metroids even bother with something that looks like it wouldn't be considered anything more than just a snack to them? Considering the fact that these things can phase through walls, it just seems like a hassle. Especially when you consider the fact that most things do not stand a chance against a Metroid. It's like we never see these things actually, afraid and on the run from something. This is crazy considering the fact that Samus is able to more or less kill them without much trouble. The weaker forms anyway, not so much the stronger ones. But anyway, getting back to the X, We really don't know much more about them than what little the game gives us. I guess this is due to the fact that Nintendo is not really big on lore, or they just didn't want to ruin what we already know about SR388. Who knows with Nintendo in these cases? The X are organisms capable of infecting and copying any organic thing that they manage to get their grubby little hands on. This basically means that now, with the Metroids gone from SR388, they have free reign of the place, and it's 99% possible that if we ever go back to SR388, or if we ever get to see it again in a possible Fusion remake, then all of that planet will be taken over by the X. After all, what is there to stop it? This is great storytelling because it plays into the whole your actions have consequences thing. And I wish that Nintendo would take this farther with the Metroid series, because we basically kill anything and everything that breathes without any consideration for what that creature does or may not be there for. Nobody ever thought about the ecosystem when Samus was on an extermination mission to kill every Metroid in sight. This is interesting because, for one, it has been established that they have highly intelligent scientists, and not one questions or brought up this fact. The Galactic Federation has a lot to answer for, and without anyone to tell them that they are wrong and keep them in check, they are on a fast track to ruining the universe. The X-Parasites are capable of attacking basically anything organic, as I said, and when they manage to escape from their holding chamber, then they manage to, as you can imagine, affect everything human and organic on the space station. Though strangely enough, even though these guys can phase through walls, doors of a different color can stop them for some reason. I really wish Nintendo was a bit more specific about that. But anyway, the game does try to tell you not to release the security locks, because they would get into other sectors that way, and yet we end up doing that anyway. So long story short, they end up infecting the entire ship, except for some animals for some reason. It will be interesting to find out later that the animals were infected too, and Samus just didn't know it. Now for the main event, the SAX. This annoying creature here is the bane of most players' existence. I'm going to do an explanation of him, and hopefully get rid of some of the fear surrounding him as well. And I hope you guys enjoy a bit of the exploits that I'm going to be showing off while I'm talking about them. The SAX is an X that managed to infect Samus' suit and basically take it over and copy it. Now the thing about that is, we know that more than one X can attack a target, and so, while the game doesn't tell you about it, it's entirely possible that all the SAX encounters that we have are separate SAX trying to hunt Samus. Yeah, Adam mentions it later on. This was supposed to be a big hint from the game that multiple X could have taken over the suit. So the SAX, or I should say SAXs, are probably unified in the hunt for Samus. Now Adam suggests that the X and the SAX by default are extremely intelligent, capable of copying organic objects. Now this is funny when you consider what we see the SAX doing that shows anything but intelligence. Now I know that this was due to the game being on a Game Boy Advance and the ability to make a consistent and intelligent AI wasn't even possible back then, but it's still funny to point out. The SAX still manages to do something that makes me scratch my head a little bit. Like, why on earth would this thing think that turning into this abomination would be a great idea? The SAX is a mystery to me in the fact that not only was it not only acting on what I believe to be instinct, but a self-serving goal. Because if it was intelligent, then why not hunt Samus down the whole game? I'm saying this because the X are already evolving as the game progresses. We see them turning into more powerful creatures as we go further. So clearly, they see Samus as a threat. Then why not just try to commit all of your resources to killing her outright? Then there's the fact that it copied all of her suit data, which means that it more or less knows how to use it all, but we only see it using some of the weapons. Lastly, we don't see it at all during the attempt by the X disguised as the scientist going on a suicide mission to blow up the space station. Yet we clearly see one of them doing everything within his powers to completely destroy the Metroids. The SAX is just a creature that makes absolutely no sense the further you look into the lore surrounding it. Up next is Nightmare. Nightmare is probably the most vague and downright creepy boss that we have in the Metroid series, period. And I legitimately mean that, which is weird I know, considering all of the abominations and absolutely disgusting creatures that Samus fights. However, what makes this one so strange and messed up is the fact that this wasn't even a creature that came from SR388. It was created. Now, what was the Galactic Federation thinking when they created this thing, this monstrosity? I don't know. However, the name definitely fits, and it just looks like something that you would see in a nightmare. The face oozes and leaks fluid the more you damage it, and when the faceplate blows up, then you see his true face, and you're like, can I just put a paper bag over his head? It would make this so much easier. If you have played Other M, then the creature makes a baby's cry, and the fact that his face looks like a baby only makes the whole thing worse. Now, the Galactic Federation was apparently going to use this creature for military applications, and I just have to say, why? Like, who looked at this and went, yeah, okay, this is fine? The nightmare was intended for the military, and the only way I could see this thing being used for war would be to basically mess with people's heads. Running into something like that would just mentally scar people, not to mention its scream would drive people insane, and the gravity manipulation alone could kill millions. Adding turrets onto it was just overkill. Finally, we have the Omega Metroid. Now, this creature is probably the most well-executed boss in the entire game. We see hints of its existence towards the end, when you are preparing to leave the station and turn it into a flying missile to destroy planet SR-388 and the station itself. Sector 1 is filled with eggs that you see hatched open, and if you look around, mysteriously all of the creatures in the area are more or less gone. The Omega Metroid must have, during its hatching and the process of its extremely fast evolution, managed to get out and eat or just kill everything that it could in a short span of time. This thing was on a mission, and when it reached its Omega Metroid state, it left and went on a killing spree elsewhere. You know what that means. Rest in peace to this poor chump. Then it went to the landing zone and decided to wreck stuff, and somehow the creatures that you end up saving ended up figuring out how to get the ship moving. Now, this is what Adam says, but some of them are monkeys, and I can't help but imagine them repeatedly smashing their heads against the console, hoping that it will work. As for the Omega Metroid though, just as we are getting ready to escape, this guy comes in here like Debo looking to get a salty run back. He's just ready to wreck Samus for no reason, and she didn't even do anything yet. The interesting thing here is this is one of the few Omega Metroids that looks like this, and normally they have a fully grown long tail. This one looks like it was genetically bred with something else and it came out wrong, which is more than likely what happened, as we discover later that the Galactic Federation was once again keeping Metroids and breeding them. This beast of a monster here is a beast in every sense of the word, as it is capable of doing something similar to Mother Brain, where it can take a big chunk of Samus' health down, and it takes a power boost from an unlikely ally to give Samus the help that she needs to win. Alright guys, and that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed and learned a lot about the bosses in Metroid Fusion, and I hope you take care and stay tuned for the next one. Alright, catch you later.